G'day and welcome back to Down the Shed with Byron. Today, changing out the rear brakes on my GQ Patrol. Tools for the job: you can get away with a couple of basic spanners or sockets, a brake caliper piston pushing in tool, otherwise I'll show you a G-clamp, little wire brush, hammer, block of wood, couple of 8mm bolts, a few consumables, and obviously brake parts. To start with is undoing the lower caliper bolt, which is a 12mm. Pull that out. While you've got everything just in place, pull your little dust cap off your bleed nipple. And while it's just sitting there, just crack that initially with a 10mm spanner. A pipe flaring spanner is the best. I just crack that off so it's easy to get to later, then just nip it up a touch. Fold the caliper up. Remove your brake pads. Now this is where you can slide the caliper off or leave it in place. Using an old brake pad, put it back inside and put in the brake caliper piston pushing tool, sorry about that, back into place. You can either just push the piston back in, or what I like to do just to get the old fluid out is put a brake bleeding bottle on there and flush out whatever old fluid's in there. So you might have just seen then, no fluid came out. It pissed out the bottom here though. So I have a feeling that bleed nipple's blocked. I'll pull that off later and give that a clean out. And just remember, if you're not going to use the bleed nipple to flush out the brake fluid will come back to your reservoir, so just keep an eye on the level. Now with that piston all the way home, you can remove your tooling and pad and check your slides. So obviously I've got a bit of movement there. I'm probably due for a set of new calipers, or at least new slides, but for now we'll move forward. So I'll just pop that off. Normally the rubber will just come off. With the caliper off, you can see the other slide and just check for movement. Now my dust cover on this one's damaged, so that'll allow water and all that dirt and dust to get in there. So yeah, I think I'll get a rebuild kit or do something later. Just put it out the way. Now I'm just going to pop the little shims out that are in the bracket, just so they're out of the way. Now we'll remove the caliper bracket, which is these two bolts here, and they're both 19mm, and they are more than likely tight as. Now removing the bracket, just placing that out the way, you can remove your disc. Now mine's fallen off already, but I'll show you some little tricks. There's some jacking bolt holes here that, if you have to use them, are 8mm threads. But what I'd start by doing is spraying a bit of WD-40 just around the hub initially and in those holes. Put your 8mm in there. Then sending them in. And if you can, make sure you do them evenly. And what that will happen is you'll see that bolt, you'll see the bolt will actually push the rotor off. But I find the quickest way, and if you're not using the rotors again, it's a block of wood and the hammer, and just give it a decent bash on opposite sides. So like 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and that'll normally pop that disc off, and that's your winner. And if you don't get it from there, use your jacking bolts and hammer, and that will come off. With the disc off now, give this surface a decent wire brush, however you'd like to do it, by hand or with a power tool. But yeah, you're basically just cleaning up any mud or rust that's slowly made its way into there. Now clean the area up with a bit of brake clean. Install your brake rotor. Now, these are a Pedders brand. I think a lot of them are coming out now where they're pre-painted, and they advise just leaving it and letting the brake pads burn that off. Again, it's up to you, but sometimes there's a protective coating on here of, it's like a rust prevention. So you just use some brake clean and give the area another wipe to clean off any of that rust prevention stuff. But it should be on your instructions when you pull it out of the box. Moving on to the brake caliper bracket, just use your wire brush again and just clean all those surfaces just to make sure there's no old brake dust or mud that's built up in there. Then checking out your slide and seeing, oh, let's focus, see if you've got any wear in there. I'll eventually rebuild these calipers in the next week or so, but for the video I'll just put it together for you. Yeah, so I'll clean that up, use some brake clean, and we'll go from there. Now you have that all cleaned up, just reinstall. You have to juggle a few bits and pieces around. I put a bit of medium strength Loctite on the bolts, then reinstall. Now with these bolts tightened up, make sure you've got those little shims and they're all cleaned out as well. Reinstall. Installing the brakes, I like to use a bit of lube just on the contact surface areas of the brake pad and on the backing plate of the caliper. So now you can use a bit of Bendix, but in most kits you'll get a little tube of lube that goes with it. This one's a little bit dark, so hopefully you can see how I just lubed up the end. You only want a thin smear, so I use the blue stuff for this side. Now we'll put the pads in. To reinstall, just take your time, slide it back into place. There we go. Now I've applied a bit of that lube just onto the slide there. So I'll run the caliper back onto there. And we'll bring that down in a second, I'll show you. And just before putting the caliper back on, I've just put a bit of that lube on the inside of the caliper slides here and a little bit on the piston. Making sure your pads are in the slides nice and firm. Bringing that caliper back over the top, sliding it down. Just push that slide across, you know what I mean, the caliper slide across. I put a touch of Loctite on this bolt, put that into place, and tighten that up. And there we have it. The brakes are back together. I'll sort that bleed nipple and slide out later, but hopefully you understand the idea of what I was doing there. Coming around to your brake pedal, give that a couple of pumps until it goes firm. So that way you know the pistons come out. Then check your brake fluid. Is that the right, oh, there we go, right level. Once you've got the wheel back on its all fours, take it for a drive. I just hold my foot on the brake gently, just slowly drive along just to create a bit of friction, bit of heat in that pads and rotor. Then I'll back off, get up to about 50k an hour, and then slowly put the brakes on. Not come to a complete stop, but just, you know what I mean, like just rolling, and then go again. And you do that about 10 times and gradually build up the braking pressure, but cooling at the same time. Okay, I think that's about it. If this video helps you out, I hope it does, give us a thumbs up. Otherwise, take it easy, and I'll see you when I'm looking at you. So just a little bonus, if you are planning on doing this job, the week before, just pull your wheels off and just have a general look and see if your calipers are seized or, you know, like possibly need replacing. Either order yourself a seal kit or buy a couple of calipers. They're pretty cheap. Then that way when you get to the job, you just bang, smashing it out. All right, see you later.